I'm David Harris, CEO of American Jewish Committee. Hello from Kyiv. We were here principally for the commemorative events that were held yesterday to mark the 80th anniversary of the enormous tragedy at Babyn Yar, where in the course of less than 2 days, 33,771 Ukrainian Jews were murdered by the Nazi occupying forces from Germany, joined by local collaborators. But in the course of the commemorative events, even as we mourned, even as we cried, even as we expressed our anger, there were several things that occurred to me that show a certain, what shall I say, progress. No, we will never bring back the murdered. But here's what's happened. At the big commemorative event, the President of Ukraine hosted. Now, think about it. 30 years ago, there was no independent Ukraine. It was part of the Soviet Union. It was occupied by the Soviet Union. And Soviet tyranny prevailed, including the suppression of any facts about Babyn Yar. And not only is there an independent Ukraine, and not only did the president host it, but the president himself is Jewish. And he lost a number of relatives at Babyn Yar. So history has moved on. Secondly, there was the president of Israel who spoke. Think about that. In 1941, during the tragedy of Babyn Yar, there was no sovereign state of Israel. There was no Israel Defense Forces. There were no Israeli embassies and consulates that might have helped save Jews across Europe. Today, there is an Israel, a proud Israel, an Israel that will defend the Jewish people wherever it possibly can. And he spoke. Thirdly, the president of Germany came for the event. Think about that as well. Germany, the Germany that in 1941 invaded the Soviet Union and murdered millions of Jews in the Soviet Union, including the Jews of Babyn Yar. The Germany of today is a totally different Germany. It's a democratic Germany. It's a peaceful Germany. It's a Germany where there is a large and growing Jewish community across the country. And there's a Germany whose president came here and said, I know that I have to speak for what happened. I'm ashamed of what happened. Fourth, the American Secretary of State couldn't be here in person, but he sent a 6-minute video. Think about that. In 1941, the US State Department didn't really spend a lot of time worrying about the murder of Jews. We all know the story of the indifference of the State Department, led by the Secretary of State. In 2021, the Secretary of State spoke at this conference, and he didn't just speak in a detached way. He spoke very personally, because his own stepfather was a survivor of Auschwitz, and he understood growing up as the stepson what the Holocaust meant, and very specifically what Babyn Yar meant. And fifth, and finally for me, the Jews who were once cowed and once silenced are no longer cowed and silenced. We're commanded in the Jewish tradition, Zachor, remember, Lo tishkach, do not forget. The Jews of Ukraine, the Jews across the world, in the United States, in Europe, in Israel, and elsewhere, have not forgotten Babyn Yar. Despite all the efforts of Nazi Germany, of the Soviet Union, of Holocaust deniers, we did not forget. And last night, we all saw the memorialization of Babyn Yar in a way that will be preserved for generations to come to tell the story. The world has changed. In many respects, changed for the better. And no, again, we cannot bring back the dead, but today we have a much better chance of protecting the living. And that's something too that we should take away from this story of the 80th anniversary of the tragedy of Babyn Yar.